It's go time. That's right. Episode, gosh, I keep hating to say episode 38 because we've got all these different things going on. But here's another episode of our indie creator exchange. This is Tom Chillemi's second time coming back on. He is a comic book store owner, publisher, and writer. So we've got an action packed 45 minutes to an hour. He is in his shop, which I just visited him this past Wednesday. So I've asked him to forget all that he talked about. we talked about and really give us the hammer on what he's experiencing as a comic book retailer. But Tom, thank you very much for joining us. And how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. As I mentioned a little earlier, I am so tired. I did a HawkCon yesterday, which was at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. It's one of the few colleges that have a sequential art program. They have a couple professors there that have done comic work, have done trading cards, poster art, like professionals that have made it in the industry, which is great.
Nice.
So the students are learning some good stuff, and for a 1 day show, and the first time they did it, I was actually really impressed. Like they everybody that seemed to come was happy. They were spending money, and they were just excited to be immersed in comics, toys, graphic novel, just everything. So it was a good show.
Um, that's
Awesome.
interesting. So that was a college level program, and the college students in the program get to table at the show.
Yeah, a bunch of them did table at the show, and a bunch of them were involved in putting on the show itself. So it was just, I said, overall, it was just a really good experience. I think that they did a great job for college kids trying to make something happen, and I would definitely do it again if they do it next year.
Interesting. We don't hear too many college programs that have a comics or sequential art program. So once again, that was what is it? Eastern Shore, University of Maryland Eastern Shore. That
Correct.
that is a private college, right? Or it's part of the University of Maryland. Is that a state?
I don't I don't know all the details.
Okay.
To be honest, I just know that that's the college we went to and we set up at. Um, but it was as I said, like when you mentioned sequential art as a program, right? I'm surprised it's not taught more and discussed. I mean, every video game, every movie, television show, obviously comics, they all need storyboarding, which is basically the art of telling a story, and it's the sequential art. I mean, it's not storyboard's not exactly the same, but you still need to sequence it. You still need to understand camera angles, light and shadowing on basically where the light source is going to be on the camera, just like in the comic book where the light source on our characters or the backgrounds or whatever it's going to be. So
It's a great
there's
it's a great education, and at April 4th and 5th, there's going to be a Comic-Con in the High School of Art and Design in New York City.
oh
It's
great.
called Fanfare. So I'm going to be going, just not tabling, but circulating around on the Saturday, and it's the only high school in the state of New York that has a career technical program for comics and sequential art, and all the students get to have a table, but there's a whole half a gym of professionals there tabling and bringing their wares, and then they also have life drawing, cosplay life drawing in the lunchroom.
Okay.
Plus they've all kinds of vendors and booths and everything. So it's great to see when these schools are doing it, and you're seeing the next generation getting their toes wet, right? Because
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yesterday at the show, Joe from Dynamite was there doing portfolio reviews. So that was hopefully enough kids took advantage of that to go do it.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah, he's headhunting talent. He's smart.
well, yeah.
He's smart. Yeah, I
Well,
mean that's what they all do. That's what they all do. And it's great. Some of those kids are going to end up with work, and some of the kids are going to work on it and come back later with another portfolio. But Kurt, you guys said that you guys we're having some real interesting conversations about the state of play with Diamond and comic distribution. So, are we going to be able to do a segment on that?
We could do that right now.
All right. So,
uh, so the
yeah, we have a lot of
you've
we
got
have a lot of creators and fans alike. And what would you say right now is going on as a retailer? Because you have like some really profound insight into what it takes to serve a community and get them their product. What's going on right now with this whole bankruptcy?
Well, I mean, basically, Diamond's in bankruptcy. The start of issues with Diamond that was super noticeable was about the week before Thanksgiving. We got notice saying that they were closing the Plattsburgh warehouse and they were closing a bunch of drop ship points throughout the country: Chicago, Baltimore. And for me, Baltimore was the big red flag. I mean, that's Jeppy's hometown. That's where Diamond, basically was born and bred from.
Yeah.
And so when things like that are closing, it means there's going to be a lot of logistical stuff. There's going to be a lot of things to figure out. And that week, retailers pretty much across the board all got their shipments late. So the next 15 weeks since, I can tell you that, between my two locations, you figure there's 30 attempts to get the books on Monday or Tuesday before release day on Wednesday, and only twice have I gotten that. So that's not a good record. There are plenty of times where we got books on Wednesday, but when you have to get them in the middle of the afternoon, depending on when your UPS guy shows up, um, you can't get everything processed and up, and you just lose a day of sales, and you lose the day that you've been building. My one location's been there 18 years, and we've been building that location. Wednesday's the day to come get your new comics, and when you don't have your new comics, it's not good. Some weeks we got it Thursday, some weeks we got it Friday, some weeks we didn't get it at all until the following week. So what that does is that disrupts cash flow. When it's extended this long, it kind of cripples it. Consumers have a certain amount of disposable income, and if they're not on a pattern where they're coming in to pick up their books, they might pick up an extra book here or there, maybe two. But if there's weeks that go by and they're like, oh well, books aren't in this week, so on Wednesday I'll come the following Wednesday, and there's 2 weeks of books, they're not that extra cash, that extra $10, $20, whatever it is gone. They've spent it on something else, and so they're not purchasing as much. So your overall sales are down. And I know that I'm not the only retailer that experiences that or has that problem. And then you have people that just aren't patient. They'll order it online, or depending on where you get your books from, you might have been able to get it earlier from Penguin Random House, or up until January, you would have been able to still get Image through Diamond, but now you have to get it through Lunar. Um, I will say that Diamond was also a good source for reorders on things that sold out from Penguin and Lunar. Their numbers seem to be a little tighter as far as what they had, and I assume that was because Diamond was taking advantage of like ratios and different things along that lines, or they just were not hit first. So like that's also makes it a little bit more difficult.
So you're
I
you're
don't
in
know.
so you're in the middle of this hellscape now, and so that's the same thing next week and the week after and the week after. It's
Right, correct. So like typically by Friday I have tracking posted for the following week. I do have tracking posted for one of my stores, but the other one I don't yet. So maybe I'll post tomorrow, maybe I'll post Tuesday. I don't really know. With all that said and be done, I don't want to see Diamond go away. I think that's really bad for the industry. Um, I talk about the previews catalog, and I talk about how many different manufacturers and publishers are in there, and how many stores supplement comic books or trades. Like, you could be a toy store selling like Super 7 toys and Marvel Legends and Hot Toys, but then you get all the comic books or graphic novels, probably sell better than the comics for those stores, of like Thundercats or GI Joe or Transformers or He Man. So you have things like that, and those stores aren't going to order from Lunar. They're not going to order from Penguin. They're not going to be able to meet minimums. And even if they are, like the new shipping will kill it. And the same thing comes with like just what the access points are. And I'll use Fantastic Four as a prime example. The movie is coming out in July. Um, I get my Funko through Diamond and not direct because I'm not required to order six of each figure on a line. So with the Fantastic Four movie coming out, if you wanted two of the four main characters and then one of each of three of each supplement characters, so you're ordering 11 figures, right? Your cost is about $88 from Diamond. It's a little under $8 per figure. If I want to get those same 11 figures from Funko Direct, I have to now order 66. And why the discount is, was shipping probably $1 cheaper, you're still like spending an infinite more amount. So now it's basically 66 figures times $7. So it's $440 investment compared to an $88 investment. It's a huge difference for stores. It's a huge difference for cash being tied up. It's a huge difference for um, inventory, and like it's those sorts of things that I think really matter. I can look around my store and I can see Monogram, I can see USopoly, I can see tons of different types of manufacturers that I just get through Diamond because it's easier to get in one place. It's combined on shipping,
Right.
and the quantities aren't as required. You can't expect. I mean, ordering from 4 or 5 vendors as it is, like in the game world, I have to chase Pokemon and Magic and other things like that, and so it's already quite a bit. But if you're talking having to get 10 or 15 distributors to get everything you carry right now and meet minimums and do that, that's so much extra work, so much loss of time, so much loss of revenue, and those stores aren't going to be able to handle it. I think that April's supposed to be when the trustee meeting is, and Diamond's supposed to either be sold or close their doors.
Ooh,
Nobody knows the exact
April.
date, but that sometime in April.
April.
It's not gonna be April 1st. It'll probably be like the middle of April. Nobody seems to really know the exact dates right now. But if they shutter, right, nobody's positioned to replace them. Penguin Random House doesn't want knickknacks. They don't want keychains. They don't want posters. They don't want toys. Well, I guess they can buy posters. They don't. They won't. Don't want to carry all the other stuff that the stores need, right? Lunar, is trying to grow and trying to do more, but there's learning curves with it. And when you're doing well shipping trades and single comic books, when you start adding statues and toys and things that are all different sizes, all different weights, and not what your system's place, it takes time to catch up. And there's no. I know that for the small press guys, I know that definitely neither one of them are really interested in picking all those small companies up. That's the overall, pretty much
This is like
thing.
this is like gold for us. This is like really good information. This is really insightful. In Kurt and I, we're creators, and we talk to a lot of creators. Then you have a comic. You're ready to try and sell it. What do you do? And everybody's going out on social media. They're doing this. They're doing that. They're doing cons. What you said about combining shipping, I mean, that is so key and essential. You're bringing a whole batch of comics to a neighborhood, and then everybody can buy it without paying the shipping. If you're just trying to buy one comic online, you're going to pay more for shipping than you're going to pay for the comic at this point.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I also think that the damage from the Diamond bankruptcy, the ripple effect, and the long term effect for small and medium sized publishers are going to happen the fastest. It's pretty well documented that there are companies that have halted operations. There are companies that have laid people off, stopped projects, because they haven't been paid. And when something's in bankruptcy and figuring it out, it takes a while. And even if Diamond comes out of it or whoever buys it comes out of it, they're still gonna it's still not gonna everyone's not gonna get paid overnight. And so we're going to have months without, creators, ultimately on the bottom end, not getting paid and not finding work. And it's going to build up. And I think that if Diamond goes away, the amount of stores carrying comics in general will probably drop by a third. I think all those stores I talk about that comics are a third or fourth focus in their store could go away. And if you look at, let's say, I don't know, Walking Dead, or you look at Thundercats, or stuff like that, I think the pop culture stores would carry.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's 500 stores and they're ordering 2 copies, that's 1,000 copies of a book. That's on these print runs of the medium sized independent guys that are selling between 2 to 5,000 copies um, through Diamond, or
That
through
goes away.
other. That's a large percentage of their print run gone.
Yeah. And it's
And
also
so I
the first 1,000 copies also pays for your expenses.
Right. So there's a lot of that could happen, and I think if that ripple effect happens, then it affects even the larger publishers in the industry as a whole. And I think we have to be really careful where the next 4 to 8 months go, and to see who steps up and who doesn't, and you hope people step up and do the right thing.
So my
And when you
my immediate question is, can some other company that is already doing distribution but of other products, maybe tangential to comics, can they step into the breach? Here in New York, I live by the Palisades Mall, and we have no less than four, maybe five of these little stores that just have like figurines and plushies, right? I mean, we have a Newberry Comics here, but we there's a store called Hello Tokyo. There's a
right,
store with these life size, Boba Fett's in the window, and you walk in and they're selling everything from Funkos to Hello Kitty. Um, so they're getting their distribution, right? What?
right.
So
So
yeah,
so
how
so
does
like,
that work?
I don't mean to cut you off here, but I'll kind of expand upon your question and some of your stuff you're pointing out. There are stores, yes, you're going to have your anime distributor in essence, or your that carries those sorts of things, but nobody carries it as in depth as Diamond. They have 35 years to curate quite a large amount of manufacturers and to fill that gap. And so let's say somebody steps up. Let's say that one of those guys wants to get Hasbro toys, or Mattel, or Super 7, or whoever, right? How long is that going to take? It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be 30, 60 days. They got to get the pre-orders in. They got to do it. So now those stores that are currently have orders outstanding with Diamond and other distributors, that aren't going to get fulfilled, how are they going to survive those months? I mean, it's hard enough when your cash flows interrupted on a weekly basis. If you go months without getting the stuff you've ordered that you plan to make revenue off of, you're going to go out of business. I'm sorry. Like, I don't, I'm typically an optimist, and I really am, but I'm also a realist. And I know that, like, it's going to be very hard to supplement those. The argument is like, oh, you can buy old product and you can buy collections and they have better margins, but collections of exactly what you need don't walk in the door every day. Even when you're chasing it, and even when you're looking for it on a daily basis, you can have dry spells. There are times where, like, I don't get anything, or just I get things that I don't really can't use, and then all of a sudden in the same week I get 6 Spider-Man collections. Like, it's which is the best thing for comics store to buy, is Amazing
Yeah.
Spider-Man. Um, but like, it's hard to say. I my realistic point is, I think the industry as a whole and stores as a whole are in significant jeopardy.
So
And I don't, and not to get into politics at all, but our economy is not great, and it doesn't matter. I don't think it mattered who would have been in office. I think we still are going to have a rough year economically.
yeah.
You hope that whatever administration's in, does things better and it makes the economy come back. But it's not. It hasn't been for the last 2 years. It hasn't been a good economy, and right now it's not, and it's not going to change again overnight. It takes time. So you compound all those things. It's I don't want to say it's a bleak out view, but it's a view where if stores and retailers don't get their finances completely as tight as possible and do things that are difficult. You have a part-timer that's working 20 hours and now he can only work 10, or somebody that's, like you have those tough decisions you have to
I
make.
was gonna say that
Um,
the poor kid with the nose ring and the death metal T-shirt, he's gonna have to cut back his hours, right?
yep.
Um, so, Kurt, since we have Tom here, um, is there what advice would you give maybe a small publisher now, like somebody in this, not Image Marvel, but is there any is there any way they could turn this into an opportunity? They have product, and maybe now they can get it before people who have a gap to fill. Would you have any advice for anybody like that? Like maybe like get a driver, go to like 10 comics stores in your region. Like, what would you say to somebody, because we're going to be looking at weeks and months of this? People are going to have to be resourceful. Do you have any
Right.
steps that they might take?
So on a micro level, right, and a micro level publisher, I would say that bombarding stores with things isn't going to work.
Yeah.
We are overwhelmed with information that we have to parse on a daily basis. You have to figure every announcement for a movie or a game or whatever it is, it affects the value of comics up and down. There's changes. We're just so inundated as it is. I mean, I probably average 100 emails of solicitations a
Yeah,
day, a day,
yeah.
and there's a lot, and there's a lot of people that
We've
there's a
spoken
lot
to
of people
some of
that
the
I
people that send
block.
those emails to you, and you wonder, if it's more harm than good, but they're going to try. The poor guys, they need to try to make connections. So that's the advice that we want. Like, what are the steps that they should take? The small.
So so where I think there's opportunity is I think the smaller publishers, even medium sized publishers, it's all about bringing attention to their product, building the community. And to be honest, things like this, and hopefully on a larger scale, there needs to be resources that aggregate, the independent guys together in one place. There's nothing like that right
Right,
now.
an
That's
aggregator.
building
Good point. Yeah.
right. And so if you have let's say a website that's or social media platform that's promoting indies, and it's cycling through and there's posting good content like what you guys are doing and what other people are doing, and just continue to do it, but also have a store that's available for both the consumer and the retailer to order from. I think that's a need in the market that's huge, because it will get more eyes on everybody's
Yeah.
product. um, and you
I
know
if I could jump in and back you up, Tom, is the thing I've always struggled with from the beginning, um, with comics, independent comics, was the networking. It's the a creator and a group of creators, publisher
right.
wise, gets together, and then they say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to make a comic, and then I'm going to find a way to distribute it." the
Correct.
The problem is that it's not. Oh, I'm just trying to choose my words here.
No, no, it's okay.
It's not financially effective to just think since you've made a comic, you're at equal standing as Marvel or DC in a
Oh
comic
yeah.
book store. In a comic
Right.
book store, but like you say, if there is a sort of like uh, the old school, approved by the
Right.
comics code, right? But there's something that is, I was really hoping Cartoonist Kayfabe was going to push out, because Ed had said multiple times, like in my mind, like 3 or 4 times, that if they reached 100,000 subscribers, followers on YouTube, they would start in Pittsburgh a Comic Con. And the thing that triggered in my head was, okay, that's the first thing you need stepping forward. Now, what did come out is Jake and I are going to IC3, which is up in Southern Connecticut State University, 2 Sundays from now. And this is the second year they're doing it. Oh, it's only indie creators. There's 175 of us. It's really well laid out and organized, and I'm, as well as Jake, very excited to check this out. One of my little under projects under sort of like thinking is, can we build some kind of loose network where I've been referring to it this way on my other podcast, Crom the Barbarian, Crom Updates, is back in the day, everybody had to have a website back in the 90s, early 2000s. One of the things you would do, especially with artists, is you would do a link exchange, a banner link exchange. So there was a page where there was a conversation going on that if you landed on my page and you wanted to find more stuff like this, check out these guys, or this going on, and it would be in reverse. I would hope down the road there would be an easier way to do exactly what we're doing right now, which is really one of the best ways, is to do the podcasting, the just open dialogue, you know what I mean, and go from there.
I think it would boil down to having a place that you could land, and you would just have, profiles of different things. Azure would have a profile, Bamco would have a profile. Whoever is on there, right? And in response, like, you would, like, the main page obviously could have featured videos, that, and then in those profiles, the place for people to update or link stuff. And I think that would be a way you need to build a community. When it comes to independence and it comes to crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, there's a lot of success with that. You're seeing more and more, I don't want to say aging professionals, but guys that aren't doing mainstream Marvel and DC work, doing their own stuff and raising quite a bit of money. And it's on lots of various platforms. Howard Chaykin's doing it. Bill Tushy's doing it. Neil did it when he was around, when he was alive, before he passed. I mean, there's so much that's out there. And for a long time, there seemed to be anybody that was doing it was labeled Comicsgate or far right or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to make a living, they're trying to get their stuff out. And it was almost like a scare tactic to keep creators from, getting out of the system.
Right,
That
the gatekeepers.
Just chewed up.
Yeah, the gatekeeper system.
One of the guys that I spoke with yesterday, one of the creators who goes to a lot of shows, has been around a long time, talked about trying to get into the Small Press Expo, which, I was there for the founding years, and I was incredible experiences. And he was just told that his work looked too professional and too mainstream to go to SPX.
Excuse me.
And
Sorry.
he talked about, like, he's like, well, maybe I'll try applying it. I'm like, why? Like, have you been to it? Do you see what's there? There is no. They claim to be diverse, but there is no diversity. It's the same type of book over and over and over.
You're right.
And so it's a weird, like, it's a weird time. I think you just have to build a following that likes your product, find ways to get exposure, and network with other people that are doing the same thing, and just try to cross promote. And we need a platform that allows that. That allows all those people to come together, because it would benefit everybody. But you need some of the medium tier guys that have experience with crowd. And when I say medium tier guys that are raising like millions of dollars on semi regular basis. Their crowdfunding's hitting 6 digits a lot, and they're doing a couple projects a year, and they've been doing it for a long period of time. And they have that following, and they built up. Like, you got 3,000, 5,000 people that are, screw it, even 1,000 people that are willing to spend $20 on whatever you're putting out, or $50. you can make a living going
Yeah.
that way.
Well, I say to Jake that when he's retired and we're doing this full time, and I'm making it funny as a joke just because you got to, because I'm so serious about it. We'll have to hire somebody to do everything that I'm doing. Because the thing is, I'm already doing this, as a business model, as for marketing for our artists, not only comics and everything, but this is an extreme amount of my time to run a business. And going back to my original frustration, my work during the 90s, other than what Jake and I were, messing around with, were publishers who ran comic book shops, and they did all the comic book shows. So I had to chase them for work and payment, which wasn't bad because they'd hit, I could do anything close because I'm in Philadelphia, Wilmington area, Baltimore, Philly, and New York, that I was always kept busy, that type of thing. But when the bubble burst in '97, they just disappeared. Two of them just totally went and met the last publisher, tears in his eyes. He tried to give me some free comics and some stuff just to help compensate for what it is that I did, but he was not gonna go on. But my point is, there needs to be a business person attached to the comic book making process and the distribution. And you talk about one of the biggest things that blew me out of the water was Neil Adams. I had gone to a show. He was there. I watched him walk in. I was standing in line. I think it was Baltimore. I was standing in line with friends, and look, there's Neil. Oh man, there's Neil. There he goes. Oh man, it's gonna be great. And literally, once the door opened, ran to find him and found him surrounded in a booth with people working for him. And and if you wanted to then go sit down and have a conversation with him, portfolio review, comics reviewed, comics purchased, commissions and everything, that all went through a business structure. It wasn't this like, oh, well, I'll do this for you. Oh, I'll do that for you. And people were like, ew. And I'm like, ew? Are you insane? Like, this is what you have to do to run a business.
Yeah, 1 year.
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything that you've done something creative until it's packaged in a business model. So I'm with you. Somebody just need, I
1 year. 1 year at the Art and Design Fan Fair that I was talking about, Neil Adams had a big triple table set up. Neil Adams went to that school, and High School of Art and Design in New York City, and so did Carmine Infantino, so did John Romita, so did Alex Toth. Over the generations, it's just it's because it's the only game in town. He was selling prints, and he would sign it. And, that was like $30. And then, he was gone maybe like, not even 2 years later. But it's a good point. Like, people are trying to run people have to run this like a business. You have a lot of semi-pros, they have a day job and they do this, in all their available time. And then once they have something done, there isn't somewhere where you can just go, give it into the information flow. One thing that has come up, and you guys are mentioning it, Tom, you were just at one of these yesterday, is that there are local cons, and you would think that a medium-sized publisher might want a table at a con and bring, wholesale amounts of their latest offerings, so that local retailers can come and they have their car there. They can just put it in the car, and now this might have to be like an alternative. But again, this is very geographical, by region, because if you're in a con, you're going to get people within striking distance, but you're not going to get somebody all the way on the other coast, right? So, what are your thoughts, Tom? I know we've been talking a lot.
So regarding the medium-sized publishers or even the smaller publishers doing that, the reason that medium-sized publishers haven't done that for a long time. Or when I say long time, like 30 years, is because the contract that was signed, you weren't allowed to do that
Oh,
because that's because you're sub distributing.
right.
That's It wasn't allowed. You were exclusive.
Okay.
Like right now, everybody's like, oh, there's multiple distributors. I'm like, no, there's mini monopolies. Like Penguin Random House has Boom, Dark Horse, IDW, and Marvel. Lunar has Image and DC. Like, and then up until I guess would be recently, it would have been like Dynamite and all those mid tier.
Yeah, you got Vault and
We're all with
yeah,
Diamond. Um, so like that's not free competition. That's not how you grow an industry. I mean, you need comics everywhere. You need affordable comics.
well, I think
I
there's
can
an
go.
argument.
I can go on for days about how inefficient distribution of comics are. You have a box that goes to a warehouse that gets unpacked and hand counted, and then you have 2,000 orders that come through for that specific title, and they're hand counted every time, 3 copies, 6 copies, 25, 50, and then put in a box. The waste of labor and efficiency and what labor costs these days and the minimums you need, like every time somebody else touches product, it basically has damages, has the ability to have a mistake,
Yeah,
mispacked, whether it's extras, whether it's shortages. And I just laugh. Everybody's like, "Oh, comics are fragile. You couldn't do a system with like inner cases and outer cases." And I'm like, "Ha!" I go to a grocery store and there's chips in every bag on the shelf that aren't crushed into little crumbs.
right,
Like they figure out how to put cards in packages and machines that can do it.
right.
Like
There's air.
that's
There's
not
air in there.
it's not the problem. It's the consolidation that we had in the industry for 30 years. And I talk about the Black Day where comic books just disappeared from everywhere. I mean, how many
Yeah.
when Marvel and DC became exclusive with Diamond, where did all the magazine and newspaper and all those stores that got their stuff from some type of sub small distributor that was selling, besides newspapers and magazines, they had comics as an option to this. Did we lose 10,000 locations, 30,000, 50,000?
Right.
I think there was a lot. I think it radically changed the amount of people that found comic books in a drugstore, a candy store, a gas station, all that sort of stuff was what fueled a generation that is like, I don't know, 40 plus,
Yeah.
right? And then under that, in the this last 30 years, how many people got that exposure to comics in one of those places? And it's none because it wasn't there.
Right.
And so, how much opportunity and how we didn't necessarily lose the generations because they wanted video games or they wanted
Yeah.
different things. It's just it wasn't there for them to see. And then when it was there for them to see, it wasn't necessary. Like I'm not going to knock Archie by any means, because Archie was a company that managed to stay in grocery stores, which was amazing.
Yeah.
They need to get more of a nod than they did, but it wasn't relatable to kids. The kids weren't seeing stuff they knew. Like, could you imagine like when any of the Disney movies came out, if all those spaces I talked about had comic books of those characters? We would have tens of millions of more people that would be collecting comics right now.
You just reminded me. Archie had digests, and that was because Reader Digest was in the supermarket, and they said if we just print at that size, we can just have a slot right there.
Smart.
And it's not like that anymore at all. We know no more Archie Digest in the supermarket now. Everybody's checking yourself out, and you have to check. So yeah, there's a lot of changes going on. So we're at a pretty scary time, a really big question mark right now. What's going to happen? Is Diamond going to be sold? Is it going to emerge, or is it going to go away? And the one point I wanted to, so that was interesting to know that a publisher has to sign an exclusive. But you know what? If the distributor is not meeting the needs of the customer or the retailers that are depending on you for that time sensitive delivery every week, I would say that, you can make an argument that, they have a right to go out, and get their products out. Um, you know, I, I,
So
I think
Jake,
there's a lot of like smaller companies, that just, don't have any voice, don't have any organization, don't have any experience. So, you,
So I'll go back a step further,
yeah,
right? So the big boom that led to the independence, in my opinion, in the 80s and 90s was obviously because of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles success,
yeah.
right?
yep,
What
yep,
what has broken out since then?
No,
It's all
right.
just
It's all big names.
it's all just
Yeah,
rehash, and
yeah,
we see that even now, where like
yeah,
film in general is okay. Well, what movie was successful in the 80s and 90s? Can we make volume 7 or 8 of and repackage it over and over and
yep,
over?
yep,
So creativity and originality, even though there's the same tropes and storylines and stuff in general, hasn't been in the marketplace, and nothing's been able to break out. I mean, you could say maybe the Power Rangers, but like the Power Rangers was still in Japan for way over a decade prior and had built
yeah.
a following. And so, like, there's been nothing that's really broken through. They talk about manga, and they talk about the success and growth of that in America. It's because they're just showing series that have been in Japan for decades and have hundreds, if not thousands, of episodes they can show, and they can just bring that product over, and it lines up together. I mean,
It's already made,
One
for
Piece,
God's sakes. It just
right?
needs to be
It's
translated.
already made. It's already there, and we're not nothing like that is going on in comics, um, and it's not like so like there's all factors that play in it, but I think that that's something that should be talked about too.
Yeah.
And just to make that move right now, because we just hit the 40-minute mark, and we like to try to keep these bite sized under an hour. But you are a publisher and a writer. So the
Yep.
last time I was down, not this past week, but the a couple months prior, you were on fire because you had just put out Lost Landers as a limited edition 100 copies ash can, and you brought it to what show again?
So I brought it to Baltimore.
Baltimore. That's right.
If you look at the names on the front there that have work in this book you're looking at, Walt Simonson was there, Louise Simonson was there. I think she signed the back of that, right? If you flip
Yeah.
it over, yeah, that's
Yeah.
Louise's signature there. And so the thing about that, Scott Hanna was there, and like the cover I chose was a promotional piece of art for it that we used in a previous year, but Scott inked it. Pop was going to originally be there, but plans changed. I've been promoting, and we had run a Kickstarter over the summer for the graphic novel that's coming out, hopefully in another month or so from here. And I wanted just to show what it's going to look like in comic book form. What is the artwork, the finished artwork, going to look like? I didn't have it lettered specifically because I didn't want the people that backed the project first to not have the first opportunity to read it. So what you're looking at is an Ominous Sir origin story, and it's actually scripted by Walt Simonson. So I look forward to when I can share it with actual words.
Oh, nice.
And so it kind of gives you an idea of some of the stuff we're doing.
Wow, Kurt, that's interesting. I have you ever heard of a no word balloon edition before? I, maybe Tom, have you heard of that before?
I mean, GI Joe had a silent
Yeah.
issue, but more importantly, if you flip through it, I mean, Guy's storytelling is great, and I mean, I think you can see what's going on.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
I've heard of silent comics before, but I'm saying this is going to have word balloons, but this is just
It's a version without
yeah,
the
it's an
text.
advanced copy, limited edition. I've never heard of that. It's really interesting. We were kind of kicking that around for us, but the problem is we have the empty balloons as part of the artwork.
right. No,
That's
I get
right.
it. I understand.
It's great stuff.
So
It's really professional level stuff. So, tell us about some of the collabs you're doing now. We all know, the Simonsons. Give us some other names that are really up and comers.
I mean, so for me, it's obviously Guy Dorian Senior's penciled it and inked most of it. Who's doing a great job. He's worked in the industry for a very very long time. His last noticeable in terms of like people really like ask about is his ROM stuff he was doing for IDW, and Chris Ryall was writing it. Chris Ryall wrote one of the character origins in this, a character named Fusion. There's a storyline with a character named Colton, and Pop Mon did the art in it, and so that's kind of fun to see his take on the characters, because I've really been looking at Guy's work for at this point almost 3 years in development. This IP is it's more than just a comic of what we're trying to do with it. So we've tried to lay a super solid foundation. Those are the two covers of what we offered in the Kickstarter. We have a hero edition and a villain edition. As you can see, the villain edition, our main bad guy, Ominous Sir, is crushing our logo and breaking
Yeah.
it up. And then on the flip side, Epicurus, or we call him Epic, is trying to save and do it. And if you look at the covers back to back, eventually we'll be able to do it as a wraparound, because our heroes are basically back to back surrounded by the villains.
Nice.
And so,
Really,
again,
it's great stuff, good quality. I see the image influence, I see the Kirby influence, really thoughtful. And so you're doing like some world building where you'll have continuations of characters and storylines, right?
yeah. So the first thing comes out is it's basically Ominous Sir, his 5 top henchmen, and then Epic, who pulls the 5 together, which is Rockstar, Fusion, Colton, the Bullet, and Toro all together. I think if you scoot it over a little bit, you can see on the Ominous Sir, you can see the other heroes. You can see the villains there. So it's doing it, and so we're having a lot of fun with it. I wanted a product that kids of all ages can read and relate
Yes.
to, which is a hard thing to write and a hard thing to put together. It has to cross boundaries, but like just in the naming sequence, like the villains' names, like on that we have Dunks, we have Slosh, we have Morana, we have Nilo. Like I want names that like are easy to pronounce, easy to remember, but still have meaning. And so Nilo is our 4-armed Yeti there, and Nilo means blue, and we call him the Blue Ghost. And so Hua is basically the second part of his name, but they're just going to call him Nilo. It's and things like that. I want it to be meaningful as well.
So, folks, if you're if you're watching closely, we all just went backwards like 30 years, and this is the fun part. It's like the content, right? Where character stories, what hasn't been done before. You got to come up with a name for every character. Now you're like, oh, that's a cool name. Oh man, I better check Google and make sure nobody has right. so
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it, right? So, like, like Mountain Ghosts was, another like potential thing. And so when I'm looking in basically Tibetan and Nepal, and I'm looking for, the native language and what they speak and stuff like that. And mountain in both of those is pronounced Prada, right? So like I can't call the character Prada because that's a famous bag and clothing line. Like that's not gonna work, So you look for things like the guy that everybody refers to. Oh, looks a little bit like Manape, and I'm like, yeah, sure. He was inspired by that Avengers villain where this Neanderthal tribe, we call them the Crag folk, conquered some Yetis, and he killed a chieftain, and he's like literally wearing the skin of the Yeti, similar to what Manape was doing.
Right.
His name is Crawl Va, and like what it means in Kingslayer. And so like just finding names,
Yeah.
meaning.
putting meaning in stuff, and
Yeah.
Easter eggs. It's and having having stories and explanations for things. It really adds to the value. I mean, you could see that your stuff is really top notch. We
Yeah.
go through.
The guy, the biggest Kirby influence guy, the guy with the crazy looking armor and all that sort of stuff. Fusion, right? His name is J.L. McCoy, right? And so McCoy, everybody knows, or most people know, like the real McCoy. And it's Elijah McCoy who created the lubrication system for steam engines. And if you didn't have it, it just didn't work. So like
Yeah,
trains broke down and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely wanted to use that last name. And then JL is Jabari Lamont, which is brave and courageous and lawful and lawman. And so even in just having the initials JL, being called JL, there's meaning in those names,
yeah.
that are resonate in the character. And I think all of that is essential.
Well, it's
Yeah, the thing I want to jump in
yeah,
on is,
Sure.
and I'm playing around with something very small in my Crom anthology. I have a 6-pager called Crom Junior, which is like a childlike version of Crom, literally as a little guy and everything. But the one thing that I always have this little voice bouncing back, which is once again from cartoonist kayfabe, and I feel it going on here, is what is that young person's first comic, and where did they get it? And for me, the reality I'm sort of following is, for every anthology, I'll do a 6-pager, and then do 5 of those, and then I can collect them. I'm even doing them in full color, but printing them in black and white in the anthology. But the distribution is going to be libraries, which is
Nice.
something that I've been really really looking into. I actually have been befriending librarians, and going into that place. Now the material like Jake and I make, or even my Crown material, it's a
Right.
tough sell to a librarian. Other than these crazy mangas that I see when I go over to the library, and I skate through there and everything. But the thing I just need to say is, like, with all the doom and gloom, this episode might
Right.
might
That's
be
true.
pushing and pulling. The art form's not going anywhere. It's just going to shift and move, and that's what we're feeling. You, for a comic book store owner, we're all concerned for your welfare, and therefore there's going to be a change, and then you've got to do your pivoting and you've got to think, but you're still, a part of the creating platform. But to actually come out and make your own, pardon the kind of encapsulation of it, but that Ninja Turtle style thing, where it's about something that I was just rummaging around in my 2 containers behind me, and I'm pissed off that they're not there anymore. But Final Fraction from
faction. Yeah,
Faction from
the dollar.
the Dollar Tree. That and the little toys, because you're also doing figurines.
Yep. Absolutely.
You had a lot of, you have some 3D generated figurines. You know, where do those two things come together? A child that has, just that forming mind and imagination, and all of a sudden, mom or dad comes home from the grocery store or the Dollar Tree with $3 worth of a comic book and 2 figurines. And if you got a brother or sister or a buddy down the street, that's where it all happbe. It's not going to happen when somebody's 40 years old and have never read a comic book, other than they might be piggybacking on the child having an engagement with a movie or a cartoon, and they think, wow, this is kind of really cool. Like, I'll get into it with them as well, and then they outgrow it, and so on and so forth.
Right.
This is super exciting. This has already been kickstarted, right? And you guys are fulfilling right now. So the next time we have you on, it's going to be another, where your business is at, for being a comic book retailer. But we're also going to be really excited to see, how this
Right.
has all come about, and the distribution that ends up, beyond your Kickstarter model.
Yeah, we have. I said there's other product lines, as you know. You've seen miniatures, you've seen statues, ultimately toys. We have an RPG game that's designed to be quick, efficient, easy to learn. It's designed to be an introductory game. Like the game that I grew up playing was TSR's Marvel Superheroes, because obviously comic book junkie and fan. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
play superheroes. I didn't want to run around in a dungeon. That wasn't what I was doing. And again, there's nothing like it on the market, and not that D&D is hard to play or learn. Um, I think an option for a world where it's fantasy, sci-fi, superhero, and all that come together. I hope that we can put out a pretty good introductory game for a need that the industry on that part of the industry needs too. The guy that's doing the spearheading development of it, he wrote for TSR and Forgotten Realms and things
Oh
that a
wow.
lot of people will know. So he has a little bit of a name in that world too.
I'm in Brooklyn last night on the way to my nephew's place. We have a practice studio for our band, and you're passing all these stores fronts now, that have D&D shops, and there's other games too. I don't know the names of, but I passed by this place. There's this place with like these 5 or maybe 6 big tables, and in the back there's like maybe 15 nerds, gamer nerds back there, and they're all on this one table, and they're just like talking. You just look in the window, and it's like, so there is a model for this, for businesses, and what a great place that would be for a spinner rack, or some boxes in the back or something like that. We spoke to some people that are trying to, get them in these new smoke shops that are everywhere, right? Because you're like, all right, some people are here, they're probably getting high and everything, so here's some comics, you could see some psychedelic comics and everything. It is going to take some time and it's going to take some creativity, but we have to try to be resourceful. And we saw this in the late '60s, early '70s with the head shops and paraphernalia stores. They're all over New York City anyway, and I'm sure every college town. But it's really tough. You're just trying to bring a batch of comics to a place where people can buy them, and then you're willing to pay the middleman, part of the cover price. So, boy, it's really great to talk to you and talk about the relationship between the creators, the publishers, and the retailers, because that's all we want is people to get the content into the hands of the audience.
Yep. I appreciate you guys having me on and listen to me spew some nonsense. No, but,
So give us the lowdown on where people can find you, your store, your comics.
So my 2 locations, I have one in Gainesville, Virginia, and then I have one in West Fenwick in Delaware. It's really easy. I brand all my stores, comics and gaming, and then whatever town or city they're in. So comics and gaming West Fenwick, comics and gaming Gainesville, um, you know, lostlanders.com for the creative stuff. My Facebook for Azure Press that has a lot of stuff on it. We're out there. We're pretty easy to find. So
Great. Yeah.
And I'll put all the links below in the
yeah,
description.
I appreciate it. Every bit helps, and we just continue just moving forward. And I guess I'm lucky or cursed. I don't know. I get to see this industry from a couple different angles and different aspects. And one day I'll talk about. There was an independent distribution company in Northern Virginia, actually in Manassas, where I grew up. It was PsychoNet Distribution, and they spearheaded black and whites. And then, by the mid 90s, it started to become where you get affordable to do color comics. And then they did it for about 4 or 5 years and then pivoted to anime distributing in the country. But they have a really interesting story. And so I got to see behind the curtain on the distribution end on that level, and just a lot of interesting things in regards to all three aspects of the industry as a whole. So
Well,
that's my unique perspective on things and where it came from.
Oh, love it.
we learn a lot, and we've spoken to you. We've spoken about you a couple times in the interim between your appearances. So we really look forward to. We save up all our questions and everything. Folks, try to get a relationship with a local retailer in your area, and get inside their head, and you can see a lot. When it all comes down to numbers and everything. You see how things really work. We have to get going though, right, Kurt? So, folks,
Yep.
we always say check out our other channel. We have the Making Turbo Pit Fighter channel where we draw live and split screen. We have the Comics That Influence where we do flip throughs of fantastic and historical comics, and we have our Indie Creator Exchange, which you're watching now. So, thanks a lot, and see us live every Sunday right around 10 Eastern. Catch our other stuff anytime on our YouTube channel.
Well, thanks for having me on again, guys. I appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you. We look forward to having you back on. Hold tight. We're going to do a little after chat and let yourself, all of us, load up. But other than that,
See y'all people.
Jake, I'll see you next Sunday.
Yep. See you guys in the funny papers.